All right, so today I wanted to talk a little bit more about masks and all the garbage that's going along with them. So, the first thing to bring up here is from James Todaro here on Twitter. He is an MD, but anyway, he says breaking Danish mask study at that JAMA, NEGM, and Lancet refused to publish was just published in Annals of Internal Medicine in the largest randomized control trial to date with 6,024 subjects. Mask mandates were not effective protection against infection. Now, again, he links to the article. It's from actually November 18th. So if you want to go read it, you can go check it out. Um, and then the next thing I wanted to bring up is also from, sorry, it's from Dennis Rancourt. Um, he says, message from an expert. In just 1 week, we've had four major peer-reviewed studies refuting masks, asymptomatic transmission, pre-symptomatic transmission, and PCR tests. House of cards is falling. Now, um, this is all stuff we already knew. It's all stuff we already knew. There is, again, when it comes to masks, there is conflicting studies from what I've seen. But the one thing that I have seen is that there's no studies that show, number one, that the cloth masks that the majority of people wear make a difference. The ones that I've seen show, number one, the medical masks in a medical environment where there's heavy controls put on, they can make a little bit of difference. But the biggest problem when it comes to masks that I've seen is the vast majority of people do not wear them properly. And a good example being is at the gym I go to, um, just implemented mask mandates a couple days ago. But again, they make an exception for intense physical activity or something along those lines. And again, the problem with that is that what's your definition of that? The definition of that is fairly subjective. I haven't wore one while working out both times I've went, and nobody has said anything. So, but nonetheless, there is some probably I don't know. The first time I went, most people weren't wearing them. Today there was most people were wearing them. So again, it's kind of a mixed bag. But the one thing that I always notice is that the vast majority of people who wear masks don't wear them properly. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen anybody who technically wears them properly. And that's the problem when it comes to masks about how people argue whether or not they work or not. But if you're touching your face, if you are adjusting the mask in any way, shape, or form, you've completely made the concept of wearing a mask pointless, right? It's completely point. It's like wearing a condom with a hole in it, right? Like there's no point. Like whether or not they work is irrelevant because you have a hole in it, right? And it's the same thing when it goes to masks. Is that if you're touching your face, they don't work. They don't work by definition. And here's the other thing too: is that the only the when you're wearing a mask, if you want to take it on and off for any reason, you're supposed to wash your hands before and after taking it on and off. And I have never seen anybody do it. I've been going to the gym for 4 months. They've had mask mandates since August, at the very least, going in and out of the gym. And I've never seen anybody do it. And they've never told anybody to do it. Again, it is entirely for show. It's entirely a show. And I think that's probably why most people don't care because I think most people realize that they don't work, or at the very least, it's all for show. It's entirely a charade. Like it's all a charade. I think that they transition from lockdowns to masks because they need something that's got to remind people that we still need to be all paranoid and we need to still be all worried and whatnot. But I mean, the reality is that we don't. But I think that that's why the masks are being pushed so heavily right now. And I think that's why they're kind of hinting around at lockdowns again because they need to give. I think this is one of the main reasons that they do it. They need to give people the illusion that the government can solve the problem. Like they need to give people the illusion that the government can solve the problem, but the government can't solve the problem. I mean, technically they could, but it's not the way that the average person wants it to be done because the solution is simply to not have the vast majority of these rules and regulations and allow people to figure it out themselves. But again, are the majority of people going to go for that? Well, no, because the mainstream media and the government has spent a year pretty much pumping out propaganda and convincing people that this is going to be doomsday, right? The hospitals are on the brink of being overwhelmed for over 6 months now. Have they ever been overwhelmed? Well, no, right? We had more people in the hospital 2 years ago from the flu than we have in Canada from the virus. Were the hospitals overwhelmed then? Did we even hear anything about the hospitals potentially becoming overwhelmed then? No, right? So the cases are going to have to be a lot higher than they are right now for the hospitals to be overwhelmed, unless there's something big that I'm missing. But if there was, they probably would have told us about it right now. So again, when it comes to masks, the studies aren't very clear on that. And this is the thing that I brought up endlessly, that if um, how does the saying go? Um, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, right? Like if you want to radically alter the way people live, and again, people say, "Oh, it's just a mask." No, it's not just a mask, because we've seen time and time again that this slippery slope argument has came true. Like first it was, "Oh, you just got to wear a mask in public spaces," going in and out of public spaces. Now it's you got to wear a mask pretty much wherever you go. A lot of places have we want people to wear masks in their house, right? Like it's the slippery. If anything, it's calling it a slippery slope is an understatement, right? And that's the thing too, is that still forcing people to wear a mask is still a pretty radical change to the way we live. And this is the thing they always bring up. Oh, well, the Asian countries did just fine and they wear a mask. But again, number one, the Asian countries didn't lock down. They just recommended people shut down their businesses. Number two, the Asian countries didn't force people to wear masks. There was no laws or bylaws saying you had to wear a mask there. It was just suggested, right? And again, this is the massive contradiction of these people, is that, on one hand, they're big on democracy, right? We got to have democracy. But on the other hand, it's, oh, we got to force people to do this. Well, again, if you believe in democracy, why do you want to force people to do something? Like, because believing in the concept of democracy is believing that the majority of people are intelligent enough to decide for themselves what to do in these kind of situations. But if you want to turn around and force everybody to wear masks, then you should be arguing against democracy, right? Again, so the contradictions of these people really knows no bounds. Like it really knows no bounds. And again, another BS thing that they keep bringing up lately is, oh, well, everybody knows now, or most people know, that the flu is basically non-existent anymore somehow, miraculously. Um, but what they've been saying is, oh, well, that's because mask mandates, right? That's because the mask mandates. Well, again, if the mask mandates were preventing against the flu, why aren't they preventing against the virus? Really, why aren't they doing something for the virus? Again, so that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And the other big argument for that is that, okay, if masks work so well against preventing against the flu, why weren't we wearing masks in the past? Or why, at the very least, recommending them? Like, why not? So again, there's many, many, many major contradictions to that argument. And again, the mental gymnastics that these people do to justify their beliefs is absolutely astounding. I think that's one of the most astounding things of this whole situation, is the mental gymnastics that these people play to defend their worldview. Right? Like they constantly cite the Asian countries about how that's the model of how we should be doing things, but yet they don't acknowledge, number one, we were told at the time not to wear masks, that they don't work, right? And borders don't, we don't got to close the borders, right? That doesn't work either. That's racist. um so again, everything we were doing back in like February and March is the opposite of what they were doing. So again, like I don't understand how you can take advice from these people when they were clearly wrong, and not only that, they had to been knowingly wrong, or at the very least misleading people. So again, the mental gymnastics that these people play is absolutely astounding. And again, they'll talk about how great, like I said, how great the Asian countries did things, and yet they won't acknowledge that they didn't lock down or have mask mandates, right? Like again, it's absolutely astounding. It's absolutely astounding. So again, this is just what I wanted to bring up today. I thought it's two very interesting points that people should. And again, I think that's something that's very important, is people, we have to spread this information. I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses of people that, I guess, agree with me, or at least somewhat agree with me, is that you got to spread the information. This is why the left has such a leg up on this kind of stuff. And again, the game is completely rigged. It's the deck is stacked in their favor, which is why I think a lot of people feel like it's hopeless. But again, you got to spread the information. And again, a lot of people probably are, so good on you. But for the people that aren't, you got to do something. Like just watching this stuff, just knowing it for yourself isn't enough. Like most people probably know someone that if they sent this kind of stuff to, they would be well versed. And this is something that a lot of people, me included, to some extent, you're afraid to send it to someone because you're afraid they'll freak out on you. But you should have a fairly good grasp. But if you send it to whoever it is, whether or not it's going to be well received. I think people they're well aware of the people that it won't be well received, and well aware of the people that it will. And I think most people, at the very least, it'll be neutral. Right? At the very least, it'll be neutral. So that's the last thing that I would bring up is that if you're tired of this kind of stuff, you got to share the information. I think that's one of the biggest things that people need to be doing right now. So anyway, if you like the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on those other platforms. If you want to donate, you could do that as well. I would appreciate that. But like I say, at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.